ties to our area. Tara, good evening.
Rick, good evening. You mentioned it. It's just been a really constant wave of information since the story broke. I'm in Cockeysville at the Hayfields Country Club, one of the several things that the Mangione family owns. In fact, they just live down this street here. The search for a killer, of course, spanned many days. It crossed state lines, but now that person of interest in custody, Luigi Mangione, was spotted at a McDonald's in Altoona. A customer recognized him from the photos that the New York City Police Department had been putting out all week long. That tip was then called in, and when officers arrived and asked Mangione to remove his surgical face mask, they recognized him right away.
He has been identified as Luigi Nicholas Mangione. He's a male, 26 years old. He was born and raised in Maryland.
A major development in the manhunt for a killer. 26-year-old Luigi Mangione was arrested in Altoona, Pennsylvania at a McDonald's just after 9 o'clock Monday morning. The Maryland native is a member of the prominent Mangione family in the Cockeysville area and is related to Republican delegate Nino Mangione. A customer recognized him as the person of interest in the Manhattan murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, alerted the restaurant employees, who then called the police.
Our fellow Pennsylvania resident, who acted as a hero today, Pennsylvania resident, saw something early this morning at McDonald's and said something to our local police.
Court records show when officers arrived, Mangione was wearing a blue face mask. When asked to pull it down, officers immediately recognized him and asked if he had been to New York City recently.
And that really invoked a physical reaction from the suspect. He became visibly nervous, kind of shaking.
Police say Mangione provided a fake New Jersey license, the same ID he used to stay at a hostel recently. According to court records, when officers asked about the fake ID and if he was lying, Mangione said, quote, "I clearly shouldn't have." Police say officers recovered a backpack with a loaded 3D printed pistol and a silencer, as well as other electronics and writings against corporate America.
And so all of that is becoming kind of a mountain of evidence that has to be analyzed and looked at.
Mangione was arraigned and held Monday night. He faces forgery, false identification, and firearms charges. Police say he was initially cooperative, but is not now. New York City police investigators say additional information will be released later this week.
The message is very clear. Police Commissioner Tish's police department will find you and bring you to justice.
Police still taking tips in this case. If you know anything about it, you are encouraged to reach out to Pennsylvania State Police, New York City Police, your local police department. Right now, Mangione is being held at a state prison in central Pennsylvania. It's unclear when he will be extradited, but the headline tonight, a Maryland native charged with murder in New York City after allegedly killing the CEO of United Healthcare. I do want to send this over to Dennis Valera. He's standing by at the Gilman School.
Breaking right now, murder charges just filed against the suspect in the United Healthcare CEO killing. These images coming in earlier tonight of 26-year-old Luigi Mangione arraigned in central Pennsylvania on gun charges. Prosecutors in New York now charging him with murdering CEO Brian Thompson on a New York City sidewalk. This is the Fox 29 News at 11. I'm Sheba Russell. The UPenn graduate is behind bars tonight, held without bail in Blair County, PA. He was captured in Altoona thanks to an alert customer at a McDonald's. Police say that customer recognized Mangione and told a worker, who then called police. They say an officer searched Mangione's backpack after he was arrested and found a 3D printed pistol and silencer.
But I have no tolerance, nor should anyone, for one man using an illegal ghost gun to murder someone because he thinks his opinion matters most.
Shapiro in a press conference tonight. Also allegedly in Mangione's possession, a handwritten document railing against the healthcare industry. Chris O'Connell is live in the newsroom tonight for us. The developments, Chris, they just keep on coming in.
They sure do, Sheba. Tonight, the FBI and NYPD have arrived in Altoona, Pennsylvania to begin questioning Luigi Mangione. He is the 26-year-old with ties to Philadelphia, in custody tonight on gun charges and now charged with murder. Tonight, the first pictures of the man police say is behind the brazen murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson on a New York sidewalk. After a week-long manhunt and 280 miles away, a sighting at an Altoona McDonald's restaurant of a man at a table on a laptop, fitting the description of the shooter. 26-year-old Luigi Mangione was asked if he was recently in New York.
And that really invoked a physical reaction from the suspect. He became visibly nervous, kind of shaking at that question, and he didn't really answer it directly.
An Altoona police officer with just 6 months on the job responded. He and a partner immediately recognized Mangione and couldn't believe their eyes.
I can't say I was expecting it by any means, but it feels good to get a guy like that off the street, especially starting my career this way.
Police say Mangione, who grew up outside of Baltimore, was found with clothing and masks similar to those worn by the shooter, a fraudulent New Jersey ID, and a 3D printed 9mm ghost gun and silencer. Also found a 3-page handwritten document that may speak to a motive.
We don't think that there's any specific threats to other people mentioned in that document, but it does seem that he has some ill will toward corporate America.
Mangione worked as a software engineer for the online car company TrueCar until 2023, according to a company spokesperson. In Pennsylvania, he faces 5 charges, including forgery and possession of a gun without a license.
Based on everything that we have seen, he was very careful with trying to stay low profile, avoid cameras.
With his pictures splashed across nationwide media, investigators say Mangione had been in Pennsylvania for several days. He was tracked from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh before his capture. Officials thanking that McDonald's customer and employee who saw something and said something.
I submit that a resident from Altoona and the Altoona Police Department helped make New York City a safer place to live.
Now, police say Mangione was originally cooperative with police investigators, but he is no longer. He's being held at the State Correctional Facility in Huntington County with no bail tonight. Shiva.
All right, Chris, thank you. And this is new at 11. The Mangione family releasing a statement late tonight on social media. His cousin, Maryland lawmaker Nino Mangione, saying, quote, "Our family is shocked and devastated by Luigi's arrest. We offer our prayers to the family of Brian Thompson, and we ask people to pray for all involved." And now to our Jennifer Joyce, who's been looking into the suspect's ties to our area and his time at the University of Pennsylvania.
Mangione graduated from the University of Pennsylvania, and according to authorities, he was back here in Philly before eventually making his way to Altoona, where he was caught. 26-year-old Luigi Mangione, a 2020 graduate of University of Pennsylvania. Now, 4.5 years later, the suspected gunman in a murder that's gripped the nation. A spokesperson for Penn confirmed that Mangione graduated with both a bachelor's degree and a master's the same semester, both degrees in computer science. According to Mangione's social media posts, during his time at Penn, he was involved with 2 fraternities, Eta Kappa Nu, an organization for engineering students, and Phi Kappa Psi, which has a fraternity house near 40th and Spruce Streets. The house was quiet tonight, but our sister station, Fox 5 in D.C., spoke with one of Mangione's stunned high school classmates. The Maryland native is a 2016 graduate of the Gilman School, a prestigious all-boys private school in Baltimore, Maryland.
Still at this moment, it's just really surreal to me, and I've been in contact with a lot of people that, you know, went to my school, were from the area, knew who he was, and they're all really devastated and shocked by this news as well.
The classmate says that Mangione was a leader. He was smart, well-liked, and involved in clubs. According to online records, Mangione was the valedictorian of his class. Investigators say they are still trying to iron out the details of Mangione's timeline and travel over the last several days since the shooting. Reporting from Penn's campus, I'm Jennifer Joyce, Fox 29 News.
And we will be covering the investigation and developments in the United Healthcare CEO murder over the next several days and weeks here. So be sure to stay with us on Fox 29 and on Fox Local for continuing coverage.
Jameson, a famously smooth whiskey from a famously big family. So big that Jose here could be one of us. You see, he's nearly as smooth as our whiskey. For him, wrong turns usually turn out all right. Even when he shows up uninvited, he's never empty-handed. And he only ever drinks smooth Jameson whiskey. Surely he must be part of the family. Must be a Jameson.
Mackenzie Frost joins us with a deep dive into the suspect's background, including his ties to a Maryland House of Delegates member. But first, Ryan Smith breaks down what tipped off police and also, Ryan, the new charges we're learning about.
Dee Dee, tonight we first start with a new image of that suspected shooter. You see him right here. This is from inside a Pennsylvania state prison tonight. Luigi Mangione, now held without bond tonight after making a brief first court appearance just hours ago. He faces 5 charges, including a felony count of forgery and carrying a firearm without a license. Now, he didn't enter a plea. He is expected to soon be transported back to New York. Investigators believe he was in Pennsylvania for several days after the shooting, all before a McDonald's employee this morning in the city of Altoona, Pennsylvania, recognized him, then called police.
He is no hero. The real hero in this story is the person who called 911 at McDonald's this morning. In America, we do not kill people in cold blood to resolve policy differences or express a viewpoint.
Also new tonight here, brand new images of the fake identification and gun that police say they found during the arrest today. They say it's a 3D printed pistol and a silencer similar to the one used in the shooting last week. Investigators also say they found a manifesto-like document, and according to sources, he wrote, quote, "These parasites had it coming. I do apologize for any strike and trauma, but it had to be done."
Police arrested a suspect in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in Pennsylvania. Joining us tonight is reporter Mackenzie Frost with our station in Baltimore with a deeper look into the suspect's background. And Mackenzie, we understand the suspect was born and raised in Maryland.
Yeah, that's right. We know that Luigi Mangione, 26 years old, was born and raised in Maryland in the Towson area, which is just north of Baltimore City. He was a graduate of the private all-boys, the Gilman School. We know that he graduated in 2016 at the top of his class. We obtained video of him delivering his valedictorian speech, talking to the other members of his class. We spoke with a few classmates of him today who describe him as well-adjusted, as someone who had several friends throughout his time at the Gilman School. The classmates say when they heard the news, they were really surprised, but they said a lot can happen in the few years since he graduated.
I'll get to that in just a moment, Mackenzie, but apparently he has connections, Mangione has connections to that school in Baltimore, which you mentioned, as well as we're learning a Maryland House of Delegates member. What has the reaction to all of this been?
Yeah, that's right. The Mangione name is very well known.
Hey guys, I got this going to about, I'll mark it on the screen continuously, about right here. I think by tomorrow we'll get back up here and then sell and then just keep entering back in with your profits. Do not hold this for the long term. This is definitely a pump and dump, but there's still money to be made. Josh, does that answer your question?
known in the Maryland area, especially the Baltimore region. Luigi Mangione's grandparents own multiple clubs, a country club in Baltimore County, another club in Howard County, just south of the city. They owned businesses in the nursing home sector, as well as philanthropists throughout the region. And when it comes to his family connections, he's the cousin of a sitting state delegate, Nino Mangione, a Republican from Baltimore County. As of right now, we have yet to hear from Delegate Mangione's office. We're still awaiting a statement. It has been silent from him as this news has surfaced, and everyone is wondering what he knew about his family member.
Mackenzie Frost reporting from Baltimore. Keep us posted on what you find. Thank you for reporting tonight.
Thank you.
It's always the right time to visit the best beach in Texas. South Padre Island is home to good vibes, great food, and beautiful memories. Visit South Padre Island, your island escape.
And I'm joined here today by our Chief of Detectives and the Police Commissioner and Chief of Department because we have a strong person of interest in the shooting that shook our city last week. CEO Brian Thompson of United Healthcare was the victim of a senseless act of violence. Our officers have been working around the clock. Many of them did not go home to pursue this individual. It was crucial that we were able to remove him off the streets of America, and we were going to seek him out no matter where he was at the time. And so this is a strong person of interest. The police commissioner and chief of detectives will go over where we are right now in the investigation. He matches the description of the identification we've been looking for. He's also in possession of several items that we believe will connect him to this incident. How did we do it? Good old-fashioned police work. The chief of detectives and the police commissioner made the decision to release as much of a photo that we had at the time. We sent it across the country, and someone, a McDonald's employee, did something we ask every American to do. If you see something, say something, but most importantly, do something. And they did. And because of that, we believe we have a strong person of interest to deal with this case.
Retired NYPD inspector and a Fox News contributor, and James R. Fitzgerald, retired FBI supervisory special agent and co-host of the Cold Red podcast. Great to have both of you with us today. Paul, let me start with you. Your thoughts on the latest developments in this case.
Well, let me say two things. First of all, kudos to that citizen who, off of that photo, which was not great, an above photo, that's always the case with these surveillance photos from video, remote video. They're at an angle where you don't get great shots. Off of that shot, this person looked at this person and said, you know what, this individual looks like who everybody's looking for. And when you couple that with the fact that the reporting was he's supposed to be in Atlanta, the fact that this person in Altoona made him is fairly amazing. The other thing I would just mention real quickly is, okay, that part is down, assuming this is him, and it's looking pretty good. But now something else begins, and there's the prosecution, there's the investigation, there's the discovery. The discovery laws in New York City these days, in New York State, are draconian on the prosecution. They got to gather a ton of stuff. You have the out-of-state issues here. They're going to have to gather all that. You got the extradition. So now it's another battle, and that's what the police are going to be concentrating on now as they go forward.
James Fitzgerald, let me bring you in, former FBI profiler. We are learning some bits and pieces about the person who is the suspect in this case. That is his status at this point. There are other outlets, including the New York Post, which is related, our sister publication, that is saying that he was a valedictorian at his high school, a private boys' school in the Baltimore area. Your thoughts on the profile of this young man?
Well, it's only a profile when it's an unknown subject. Once we have someone identified, now they're going to be doing a behavioral assessment. If the shooter has been deceased himself, they call it a psychological autopsy. But now they're going to do this behavioral assessment, this psychological assessment of just what made this person tick, what made him as mission-oriented as he was to have devoted 10 days, probably more, directly involved in the killing of Mr. Thompson of United Healthcare. So they're going to try to find everything going back to his prep school days, his valedictorian days, any type of social media he was involved in, certainly the web searches he's conducted, and that's going to put a total picture of this person together. And this will be evidentiary that can be entered into a trial at some point. Defense will always fight these things, but these types of issues that suggest motivation and rationale for doing this would certainly be important. Doesn't surprise me either that this guy was somehow a fan of the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, and he has his mini manifesto of 3 pages. We'll see if there's as much evidence in there as there was in the 56-page manifesto of the Unabomber, but I'm sure there'll be valuable evidence they can use against him in a court of law.
Yeah. Paul, what strikes me is, when I saw his face, and you can see it more clearly if we have the picture of him smiling at the woman who was, there he is, big smile on his face. And I thought when I saw this picture, Paul, that he's a young man, he's smiling in this photo. I thought anyone in his family, they know that that's him as soon as they see this photo. He went to, if these reports are correct, a prestigious prep school, that's all over social media. All of those people, his professors, they also, if they saw this picture, Paul, had to have been able to identify this young man. Do we know whether or not the investigators on this case had been reached out to by people who said, that's him? They couldn't tell where he was at that point, but they identified him.
Yeah, I mean, I have not heard that. That doesn't appear to be public. One of the things I would go back to relative to that question is the Boston Marathon bombing with the Tsarnaev brothers. We had a similar circumstance.
Exactly.
4 days where we were killing ourselves looking all over social media for who they were. And then we find out later, all his dorm mates knew that Joe Tsarnaev was probably that guy, but they couldn't believe it of him. Yeah. And everybody was afraid to accuse erroneously. So there is a little bit of a downward pressure on it. But I will say this. Think about the needle in a haystack work the PD did here. This guy comes into the city. He had a lot of planning. Apparently, according to some reporting that's out, he locked down his electronics. They're going to have a hard time getting into his phone, etc. But he took all these precautions. He came in. Apparently, he's surveilled. And yet, they found him within a couple of days at that youth hostel, got that photo. That really is what broke this.
Yes.
So kudos to them. Kudos to this woman at the McDonald's, and kudos to the Altoona PD, who went out and took the call seriously. That would have been a very easy call to be a little dismissive of. They took her seriously. They went out. They eyeballed him. They see the eyebrows, which it's almost like, Koberger, the accused in Idaho. The eyebrows here are distinctive, and they put it together.
Yeah. No, it's extraordinary. We knew that he took a bus out of Upper Manhattan and that it stopped a number of places along the way, that the route was headed to Atlanta. So there was a big effort in Atlanta, but we also knew that it was making certain stops along the way. And apparently he got off in Pennsylvania, if all of this police work adds up. So gentlemen, thank you very much. James Fitzgerald, Paul Moreau, great to see you both. Thank you for being here.
Nestled between summer's happy chaos and the holiday hustle bustle is Scottsdale's best kept secret, Opulent Autumn. It's the perfect time to reset, find your balance, and embrace the thrill of new discoveries. From sunny Cimarron desert hikes and pampering spa treatments to culinary delights from our celebrity chefs, Scottsdale has all the ingredients for a luxe, relaxing getaway. And if you'd like to add a little holiday sparkle, we've got that too. Visit unwindinScottsdale.com today.
Get the people you care about the great gifts they deserve today. Then pay over time at Aaron's. Rent to own the furniture, appliances, or the tech they'll love with low, budget-friendly payments. In-store.
Former FBI Assistant Director Chris Swecker. So, Chris, let's talk about the nature of this crime and crossing state lines and what part the FBI might play in this. Because he traveled from Atlanta, as we understand, to New York and then committed the crime in New York, allegedly, and then fled to Pennsylvania, where he's picked up by local police. NYPD is probably in the process now trying to get him extradited back to New York City. So how does all of the various levels of law enforcement and the judicial system play into what we're going to see happening in the days ahead?
Yeah, John, this was actually a master class in modern criminology. I mean, you had all this modern technology with video cameras, all kinds of different forensics, DNA, fingerprints. You had the media getting involved, all this, all the different elements eventually funneled down to one alert citizen firing on all the media, photos that had been out in the media. So this one is going to be one, there'll be many books written about.
Yeah, and there was a question in that, in the mayor's briefing just a moment ago to the police commissioner and others, was this name already on your radar? Was this person already a person of interest to you? And they said no. So as much as we were told they were zeroing in on this person and they were obviously making his pictures and information available to the public, ultimately this came down to that McDonald's employee who had seen enough pictures who said, I'm calling 911. This is the guy.
This is a lot like how the Boston bombing was solved. It was, the technology part of it, though, does play a significant role in that you've got to collect a lot of video, which is digitized, put into a database, and then you have to speed match using time frames, select time frames, and facial recognition, which is now ready for prime time. It wouldn't have been ready for prime time 10 years ago or 5 years ago, so that would have been a manually laborious process. Not as much these days. Then eventually when you get some suspect video, some interesting video, relevant video, then you have a human look at it. But a lot of this is I won't call it AI, but it's analytics, video analytics at its peak performance levels.
I mean, when you consider, Chris, the number of photographs that are taken on the streets of Manhattan every day, and within hours of the crime being perpetrated, they were circulating photos of this person out there. From the street, I mean, obviously you would think that outside of the hotel is going to be the easiest video to get, but then they got video from the hostel, they got video from inside a cab, they got other video of him riding a bicycle down the street. I mean, I can remember a time when there weren't any CCTV cameras, or very few of them, in New York City. Now they're everywhere. And if you don't actually solve the crime by using the CCTV video and photographs, you can certainly enlist the help of the public and leverage the entire U.S. populace to be on the lookout for this guy, as apparently happened today.
Yeah, and prior to this video technology, you had to hope that the person had been arrested in the past, which would have allowed a fingerprint match in the FBI's fingerprint database, or nowadays a DNA match, which I know they have both DNA and fingerprints in this case, but they were unlucky in that sense that he was never arrested. But it's shocking that no one identified him sooner. I thought there would have been an identification within the hour of his photo going out there.
Not to mention, one of our producers just confirming that the suspect's cousin is a Maryland state delegate, goes by the name Nino, Antonio D. Mangione. And they are issuing a statement from their office shortly. To think that they didn't see these pictures and know that this was a relative would be shocking. So we'll see what the statement says. Meanwhile, we're about to get back to our reporter on the point about the DNA because Alexis is confirming with her police sources that they did take DNA swab, as would be expected from the suspect, that they have now got in custody. They're going to now take that, she's being told by the police, to the DNA and the saliva that was found on the drink at the Starbucks. And you've got to think, Chris, that that's going to pretty much seal the deal here.
There are mountains of forensic evidence here that will make this a slam dunk trial when the time comes. What's interesting is John had mentioned the FBI. If his ideology matches up with what I think it does, which is sort of an anarchist ideology, against corporate America, if you will, this may actually fall into the category of domestic terrorism, because that type of anarchist philosophy driving a violent act, if it's not a motivation that's based on a personal experience, like he got a claim denied or something like that, and it's a broader ideology that's motivating him, then it's not a specific charge, but it's just interesting to note that it could fall under that rubric of domestic terrorism.
Are you having any fun? What you getting out of living? Who cares for what you've got if you're not having any fun?
You can call me Detective Alex Cross. You're not in my head. I'm definitely living rent-free.
Yeah, I mean, John, sorry, I mean, you're just kind of baffled, and I'm sure our viewers are too, to think that this was somebody who was educated in the United States, grew up in Maryland, obviously to the point, I think it was Judge Early, or maybe it was Cardinale. He had roommates, friends, I mean, former colleagues. It's incredible to think the pictures we have, obviously this one, he's masked. We have pictures where he is not wearing his mask, that no one else flagged who this was. Chris, thank you very much for jumping on the breaking news with us. Jonathan Turley's on it with us, constitutional law attorney and Fox News contributor. Jonathan, you caught my eye when you were reacting on Twitter to the news. What is your thinking on what we have learned and how this is all playing out with an employee at a local McDonald's saying, hey, that's the guy?
Right. There's so many things we have to learn about this suspect, including what more evidence there is. It seems like the evidence that they've listed is quite compelling. There are cases that we've looked at in the past that you have people that hold on to the articles of the crime. It's often the case for thrill kill types of cases where they become almost trophies. This is someone who is obviously highly intelligent. And he may have been too clever for his own good. He kept evidence on him. He didn't seem to want to part from it. We don't know much about his background, except that the NYPD said that he has an anti-corporate attitude. Some other sites have said he's anti-capitalist. We don't know if he's associated with groups like Antifa or other groups that are anarchist or anti-capitalist. All of that is going to play out as we go down the road. But one of the things about the contents of the backpack and what we do know is that this has an interstate profile. He moved between states. That was enough to get the FBI jurisdiction. It's also enough to have potentially dual jurisdictions going for prosecution. I think most people would agree that New York deserves the first attempt to convict this individual. But that's something that is negotiated between federal and state officials as to what would be best for the prosecution. But the anticipation is that New York will take this case. It's the New York PD that did the heavy lifting here.
There's so many different ways to dig into this. There's the ghost gone. There's now the connection to the Maryland delegate who, how did anybody who was related to this person not say, I know that guy, and call the police?
Well, that is certainly a very relevant question. And you know what? When a guy at McDonald's can pick up the phone and a relative and someone who is in a particular job where he's working for the government essentially and for the people can't, you've got a problem. So, what I'm most interested in right now is, they're not ready to call him the defendant yet. They're not ready to arrest him. Different laws kick in when you become the actual suspect.
I think they did make the arrest. The police department just, Judge, while you were getting seated in the chair, a statement did come out that they first made contact with the male who was subsequently arrested on all charges. Okay, I will dig through here, but I did read that there was the arrest.
Okay, good. All right, so obviously now he is a suspect. But here's the interesting thing. you know, a lot of people thought, oh, you know, he has a silencer on a gun, he's probably a pro. Well, he was not a pro. He was not a pro based on the fact that he pulled his mask down to flirt with a woman at the hostel. And then he was very sloppy about all of this. And the monopoly money. You know, I want to remind the viewers that motive is not relevant. It is not an element of the crime. We all want to know why he did this, but it's not relevant. The people will go to trial and prove beyond a reasonable doubt that that person committed that crime, and whatever the motive is, you cannot speculate, and we don't even care because it's not part of the proof. So what I'm curious. I want to believe that there was something where he said, I have a relative who didn't get coverage, but then this deny and depose and all of the notes that they found on the ammunition.
Well, it seemed like it was a hatred for corporate America. From what we have heard from authorities who have read the 3-page manifesto.
Yeah, which I haven't seen yet.
It seemed like, and this is reading directly from the New York Police Department, the document was found with the suspect, and it showed, quote, ill will towards corporate America. Obviously speaking to the motivation potentially and the mindset behind this.
Now, ill will toward corporate America, why? You could have ill will toward a lot of people. There's got to be a personal connection that makes him focus on corporate America. Bad stuff.
So, Judge, let's speak to the cockiness of the person that is being described by police. The fact that he wrote messages on the shell casings that he knew would be left on 6th Avenue or 54th or 55th Street, whichever side he was on, for the police to find. The fact that he left his backpack with monopoly money in it in a place where he knew the police would eventually find it. If he wanted to dispose of it, he could have done it many other ways where the cops never would have found it.
Yeah.
He was leaving a trail of breadcrumbs that seemed to really suggest that, you know, you can't catch me. And here's what I've got to say.
So there's certainly an argument to be made, John, that this is more than just, you know, his trying to send a message with these notes and these breadcrumbs, that he's playing a game. And a lot of criminals, a lot of defendants think that they're smarter than law enforcement and that they want to engage law enforcement because they think that they can outsmart them. This kid may very well be that guy. I don't know for sure. But what I can tell you is that they're out there. And there are people who will, you know, write a certain way or try to leave a breadcrumb to, you know, have law enforcement go in a different direction so that they can continue to play with them. It's almost like a game on a video game for them. So there's a lot to find out about this suspect as to why. And there's a lot to find out whether or not did he take classes in criminal justice? You know, did he watch television and think he had everything covered? You know, with the silencer, as I said earlier, people thought, oh, it's probably a pro. It's not a pro. He was dumb. Everything he did was dumb, from picking up the bottle, the bicycle, all of that stuff, to the mask in the cab. You know, we were going to find him sooner or later. I would tell people, you don't have to worry about this. NYPD has got this. And now all of America, it's a good day for, I got to tell you, America. Danny Penny was acquitted today, and this guy who killed in cold blood on a street in New York City was caught, and he will be prosecuted.
Such a great point.
And, you know, end his life, hopefully in prison.
I want to get to your Daniel Penny interview in just a moment, but I did dig up the police statement that did come out to confirm it was at 9:14 a.m. that Altoona police officers were dispatched to that McDonald's restaurant where an employee called after they reported a male matching the description of the murder suspect of the United Healthcare CEO. Officers made contact with that male, who was subsequently arrested on unrelated charges. At this time, the Altoona Police Department is cooperating with local, state, and federal agencies, and they will have more information released this evening.
Some great camera work. A huge break in the hunt for the killer. New York City police announcing that a suspect has been arrested in the brutal murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. He's 26-year-old, you're looking at him right now, Luigi Mangione. He was found hundreds of miles away from Manhattan, I think 285, eating at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, after being spotted by workers. The New York Post reports that he's an anti-capitalist Ivy League grad. He was valedictorian of his high school class, who liked online quotes from Unabomber Ted Kaczynski. Here's what police had to say.
Officers recovered a firearm on his person, as well as a suppressor, both consistent with the weapon used in the murder. They also recovered clothing, including a mask consistent with those worn by our wanted individual. Also recovered was a fraudulent New Jersey ID, matching the ID our suspect used to check into his New York City hostel before the shooting incident. Additionally, officers recovered a handwritten document that speaks to both his motivation and mindset.
All right, that's what we know so far. And while cops investigate, some on the left are actually treating the suspect like a hero. New Yorkers held a tasteless shooter look-alike contest in Washington Square Park. Where else? And former Washington Post reporter Taylor Lorenz has been openly celebrating his murder while suggesting other executives should also be targeted. So many executives have taken their name offline on their websites because now they feel as though they could be targeted. I'm sure they're getting personal security. So before we talk about the inappropriate celebrating of the killer, can we talk about this anti-capitalist? He had handwritings about his chronic back pain, perhaps that he had. He made his gun off a 3D printer, a tech wizard who graduated in 2016. So, Dana, it seems like this guy is divorced from reality. He's living this great life. And now he doesn't realize, on some level, killing somebody is going to put him in prison for the rest of his life.
Well, I am glad for everybody that's worried about this, especially for Brian Thompson's family, that he is apparently caught and they can maybe start to relax. But what I find, not relax, but, you know, not worry that there's maybe something else coming for them. I just feel like there's a huge number of questions here. Obviously, was a very, very smart guy, valedictorian out of school, all of these readings. I don't know what snapped, what happened. Maybe it's the back pain. There's just so much that we don't know. What I am grateful for is these eagle-eyed eyewitnesses who are willing to say, wait, I think that looks like the guy, and they were able to catch him.
They should get more than $10,000, don't you think, Judge?
Yeah, but you know, I used to offer Crime Stoppers. I used to offer money. It depends on how much money you get from people who want to contribute to Crime Stoppers. Yeah. Yeah, it's not like you have a fund for that. It's like you have these fundraisers, everybody come, we make arrests. But I got to tell you, I mean, Dana's right, he's a smart guy, but he's maybe a little too smart for his own good because he started playing a game. And if that backpack was his, and he had monopoly money in it, and if the ammunition said, you know, deny, depose, and whatever the third D was, you know, and he thinks he's so smart covering himself up. He's really not too smart. He's at the hostel signing in. He's flirting with a girl. He takes the mask off totally. But what I want to know is, everybody in America saw that picture. Everybody saw this, and then everybody saw more than that when he was in the cab. Why didn't somebody who's like related to him, went to school with him, he's got a cousin who's a delegate somewhere in, is it Maryland somewhere? You know, why aren't they saying something? But it's a good day for America. And I started by saying that Danny Penny was acquitted. This guy is arrested. But I really believe that he's too smart for his own good.
You know, they didn't even have his name, even though they had his picture. They didn't have his name. That's crazy to me.
Well, they told you they